Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Living Traditions Homestead. We have a break from the rain today, which I feel like is a miracle and a godsend. We have not been able to get into the garden for at least a week because of the rain, the weather, and because we've been gone at the farmer's market and 2 days at Baker Creek. So we came out here today to check on everything. It looks like things have really been growing, good and bad, the veggies and the weeds. So we thought today would be a perfect day to give you a tour of our spring garden, weeds and all. Now we also have what I feel is like a big reveal. We haven't shown you the plants underneath the floating row covers, so we want to open them up, take a look at what's going on inside, good and bad, and we're excited to show you how things are going. So let's take a look at what's growing, what's not growing, and how big the weeds have gotten. The first row that we have planted here are radishes, and there are some good things going on here and some bad things going on here. We did have a decent germination rate on these guys. They are actually all ready to pick right now. Some of them are on the big side, some of them are on the small side. We have had so much rain and the weather has been absolutely perfect for aphids. And the aphids have actually really taken over the leaves of these radishes. We're gonna harvest them and not use the leaves for our family because of the aphids. We don't think that it really makes any sense to do anything about them with an organic pesticide because, well, they're just ready to go. So we're going to harvest all of these for the family and we'll give all of the tops, the greens, to the animals. Now our original plan with these radishes was every week to plant 10 more feet. This is a 50-foot row. We've decided not to do the succession planting with the radishes because we actually have ended up needing 2 rows of this garden for other things this summer. If you remember, we are growing Dad Sunset tomatoes and a variety of eggplant for Baker Creek this year for seed. The tomato varieties need to be at least 50 feet away from any other tomatoes, and we don't have room for eggplants in our summer garden. So it just makes more sense not to continue planting the radishes here, so we have this row open for either tomatoes or eggplants, and then we've figured out another alternative in a different row in this garden for the other vegetable. So we will probably be picking all of these radishes today or tomorrow. Let's move on. Next up is the spinach. And we had something kind of weird happen with the germination of the spinach. This half of the row did really well, and it looks like maybe 80% or 90% germination. But on this half of the row, I don't even think 50% of the seed germinated. It's really kind of weird. But those that did germinate are doing really well. We are definitely at a point where we can do a harvest of most of the mature leaves. Now, this first harvest anyway, we're gonna eat some fresh, and then I'm going to blanch it and freeze it in 1 cup servings so that I can pull it out of the freezer over the winter and add to casseroles and those kinds of things. So we're actually really excited about how well this is doing. Over the past, well, last year we didn't really have a good spinach harvest at all, so I'm excited to get some more of this in the freezer for this winter. Something fun that has happened on accident or, without us trying, is that some of our dill that we have in a raised bed last year their seed has come over here and germinated within our spinach plants, and actually it's in other rows too. So it's kind of here and there and everywhere and doing really well. It's actually a really fun accident to happen. We'll let that continue to grow and harvest it when it's ready for our family and for the farmer's market. It's just kind of fun. This next row is half leaf lettuce and half dinosaur kale. So let's start with the leaf lettuce. Last week we had some really bad storms with a little bit of small hail, and I thought for sure that this lettuce was going to be too damaged to use at the farmer's market. We didn't end up harvesting any of it for the farmer's market or for home just because of our schedule. And I think that it has all doubled in the last week and it looks absolutely gorgeous. Now with leaf lettuce, you can harvest it all right above where it comes out of the ground. And the new leaves will just continue to produce more and more and more and more. So these look absolutely gorgeous. This is our favorite mix from Baker Creek called Rocky Top Leaf Lettuce Mix. It is absolutely gorgeous. It tastes so good, nice and sweet, very delicate, and we're so pleased with the way that it's working out for us. Now let's move on down the row to the kale. The dinosaur kale, we only had about 50% germination rate. Those that have germinated just really have not done much for us. In fact, in this part of the row, it's hard to determine if these are weeds or the dinosaur kale. So we will keep it growing as long as it will grow through the summer, through the hot part that's coming up. I'm not sure if it will do all that well because of the heat coming, but we will be starting this again to grow over the winter in the greenhouse. And you know, we'll just let it go and see what it does. But we're not very excited about what has happened with the kale this spring. So this next row is our head lettuce that we are growing for the farmer's market. This is actually a romaine type of head lettuce rather than the iceberg lettuce that is, you know, tight in a ball. This variety can either be used as leaf lettuce or as head lettuce. In fact, this variety is actually included in the mix that we use of leaf lettuce. We planted these pretty close together and they do need to be thinned so that the heads will produce really nicely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to thin out those that are too close and bundle them together, like 3 or 4 of them together, and sell them like that as young head lettuce. And so I think that will go over really well. And then it will provide the space needed for the remaining ones to really get nice and big and full. Next up is our row of beets. And they are right on track. They're doing really well. They've got beautiful tops on them. We do have quite a bit of weeding to do in this row. They're not starting to form their bulbs yet, and that's fine. Like I said, they're on track. They all look very healthy. We did go ahead and thin these out a couple of weeks ago to make sure that each beet has enough room to grow. So I am very pleased with the progress of the beets. We just have quite a bit of weeding to do. This next row is a complete bust. We planted kohlrabi seeds in here, and if we had a 5 or 10% germination rate, it would be amazing. I think we only can see 2 or 3 kohlrabi that actually germinated and are coming up. So this row will be used for either the tomatoes or the eggplant that we're growing for Baker Creek. I don't know if the seed was just old. I know I didn't buy new seed this year for the kohlrabi. We are going to try kohlrabi in the greenhouse over the winter and see if it does better then, but it definitely was a total bust for the spring garden this year. This row are turnips, and they are doing fantastic. This is definitely a big success. Their greens look amazing, and when you pull them back to look and see what's going on in the ground, they're actually putting on their bulbs. There are a few of them that I think are only about 1 week away from harvest. We cannot wait to have roasted turnips. If we have too many, we'll take them to the farmer's market. It's been a while since we've had turnips, and we are so excited. It's one of our family's favorites. Next up are our brassicas, which have been growing underneath these floating row covers. This is the first year we've ever used floating row covers, so we've been nervous about how well they're doing. We haven't looked at these guys in quite a while, So we're gonna go ahead and uncover all of these so that we can show you and so we can see if they're doing really well or if they're not doing well. We're pretty nervous, but mostly excited. First up is the cabbage. The cabbage we planted this year is an heirloom variety from Baker Creek called Golden Acres. It's a 45-day cabbage that will produce small heads, not giant heads, but small heads. We are super excited to see what's going on under there. Let's go.
Wow.
That's fantastic! It's obvious now that even though we were worried about the air temperature inside of there warming up, that it didn't affect how these guys were growing. We have checked the soil temperature and have been reassured that things in the ground are not too hot for these plants to grow. They're actually 100% ideal for what we want. So I am so happy. So let's get these guys covered back up and then we can check out the broccoli. Oh wow! Some of these are putting on heads already. Wow. Oh, this is gonna be awesome. Wow, these are looking great. They're starting to put heads on. They're only about that big so far, but they are looking fantastic. Some of the leaves look like they're getting a little on the yellow side, and I would guess that that's because we've had so much water. But they look fantastic, and I'm so excited to see how big these heads will get before we can harvest them. This second row is doing just as well. Here we have 2 rows of cauliflower, 2 different varieties. The variety here is hybrid, and this one here is an heirloom. We're going to open these up in a little bit, but I want to talk about these heirlooms first. We noticed about 3 weeks ago that they were actually bolting already. Half of them had already gone to flower. The other half had heads on them that weren't even 2 inches across and were starting to spread out like they were going to flower. This variety is called Pusa Magna, and we got the seed from Baker Creek, although it looks like they no longer carry it. This is the second year we've tried this, thinking maybe we did something wrong last year, but it just seems like this is not a cauliflower variety that is good for our area. So let's open up this cover here and see how the hybrids are doing. Okay, well these guys look a lot different than those heirlooms. The plants look fantastic.
Oh, here's a tiny head.
Oh, really? The plants look fantastic, but overall they're not producing their heads yet. But I'm encouraged that these guys are going to do well. The leaves look beautiful.
Oh, those are looking good.
I think these are looking great. Now these are collards. So we're just looking at the quality of the leaves. I'm not seeing any evidence of bug damage at all. Again, they look a little bit mottled with yellow, and I really do think that's because of all of the moisture we've had. But gosh, these are great. I think that we can probably do a first harvest very soon. Next up is a row of snap peas, sugar snap peas, and they are doing so well. Just a couple weeks ago, we ran wire here for them to grab onto and grow up, and at that time they were only a couple inches out of the ground, and now they are so tall that we need to add several more layers of wire for them to grab onto. They are full of blossoms, and they have some small pea pods already starting on them. We've already eaten a couple and they taste great, so we're super excited and so happy with the progress of these guys. This row is of our English peas, and these are little marvels. We did have to reseed these guys because only about 50% of them germinated initially, so some of them are a couple weeks behind the others. And even though these guys are a lot smaller than the sugar snap peas, I don't think they're behind schedule for themselves. We clearly have a lot of weeding to do. We'll catch up on that soon. It's just been so wet and rainy, we just haven't been able to get out here to do it. But it's also then been a perfect environment for the weeds to grow, so much moisture. So pretty soon we need to add more wire for these guys, but we also have our work cut out for us. Can you imagine this entire garden if it didn't have this woven weed fabric? The entire thing would look like what's in between these rows. We are so thankful that these are working so well for us. Next up are the carrots. They are doing really well in spite of all of the weeds. One thing that I found difficult about growing carrots is that they need to be pretty big before you can decide what's a weed and what is a little carrot plant. And then when they're small, they're so delicate. So now is actually a good time for us to go through and pull the weeds so we can see what is a carrot plant and what is a weed. But these are going to do great. Inside of here is actually 2 rows of carrots. This row here is all of onions. This half are from the little starts, you know, the little onion bulbs, and they're doing very, very well. They also need to be weeded, and I planted them really close together so that every other one, or 2 out of every 3, we can pull up and use as green onions. This half of the row was planted with bunching onion seeds, and there's a lot of weeding to do. Similar to planting carrots, when they germinate, they're really tiny. They look just like blades of grass. So now's the time where they're big enough that we can go through and pick out the weeds and keep the little bunching onions. So we have some work to do there as well. We have 2 rows of potatoes. This row is the Kennebec potatoes, and back here is just actually a mixture of some purple potatoes that we got from a friend and just some we had in the kitchen for too long and they started sprouting. They're both doing really well. This year we decided not to trench up and backfill with dirt. We decided to do it with straw, similar to what Art and Bree did. They have a YouTube channel. Last year they did this and they loved that they didn't have to dig through the dirt to get the potatoes. These potato plants are at the point that we need to go back and add more straw to cover these up, which will encourage the plants to grow their potatoes in the straw rather than just down in the dirt. So we have a few weeds to pick. You can see that the straw here, some of the straw had seeds in them and it sprouted. Some of this we'll have to pick, but others we can just smother with more straw. And these will be in good shape once we get to that point. Gardening is always full of ups and downs, successes and failures. And so far this spring, the successes have far outweighed the failures. We're super excited with how much food we're producing, how much food we'll be able to offer at the farmer's market. It's just going so well. You guys, I hope you enjoyed seeing what all is going well and, can appreciate the fact that some things just go terribly wrong sometimes, and that's okay. Learn from it. Start over, start again, either now or next year. If this is your first time visiting our homestead and seeing our gardens, we'd sure love for you to consider subscribing to our channel. If you enjoyed this video, we'd love for you to consider sharing it with your friends and family. And until next time, thank you so much for stopping by the homestead. Take care and God bless.